especially latter scholars, have categorized Tawheed into 3 different categories because they feel that this is easier, because that first category that we talked about, which is knowledge and affirmation, can actually be broken down into 2 further categories. So you single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the creator, the sustainer, the manager of the heavens and the earth, what is known as rububiyyah, his lordship subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he is the only Lord, he is the one that is in control. He is the creator of the human being, he is the creator of the universe, he is the creator of causes and effects. This is an important thing to recognize, by the way. We'll cover this later, inshallah, when we talk about different aspects of shirk, which is the opposite of Tawheed. That Allah Azza wa Jal created causes and effects. What does that mean? That means that the only reason that fire burns something is because Allah Azza wa Jal created fire to have the effect to burn. Otherwise, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want it to burn something, it's not going to burn. Do we have a clear example of that? Clear example in the Quran. What happened when Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was thrown into the fire? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the fire, Kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. Be cool and peaceful for Ibrahim. So even though he was thrown into the fire by his people, the fire didn't do anything to them, because Allah Azza wa Jal is the creator of causes and effects. Now, most of these causes and effects we call, in our language, we call it nature. Natural things, right? So if water gets on something, it wets it. Except for the fact that you may put something like fingernail polish on, so if the water hits the nail, it doesn't actually wet it because there's something preventing it. The point is, we know causes and effects. They are more like what we would call natural phenomena, right? However, and this is important for us to understand as well, that there are certain aspects of our deed that because of our faith, we have to go beyond what we see to be natural causes and effects and realize that Allah Azza wa Jal is in fact the creator of causes and effects. So, if you want your wealth to increase, what do? You invest it, you do some smart kind of business, right? Because you want your wealth to increase. You want to live longer, you go to the doctor says, okay, if you want to live longer, you got to start eating better. Cut out the fried foods. You got to get better sleep at night. Sleep is important. Get your 8 hours in every night. This is the doctor's advice. Because it's not a Muslim doctor, because you're going to be missing Fajr if you sleep for 8 hours at night. But the point is, the doctor tells you all of these nice things, and if you do these things, you're going to live longer. You walk out the doctor's office when you have to get hit by cars. Your time is already determined. But these are natural causes and effects, except that the Prophet ﷺ, who didn't speak from his own desires, it was only revelation that was revealed to him, told us, whoever wants to live longer and wants his wealth to increase, فَلْيَصِلْ رَحِمَهُ, then let him do what? Keep good ties with his family. SubhanAllah. Let him keep good ties with his family. And his life will be longer, and his wealth will increase. It's a cause and effect relationship. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is the creator of the effects, which is that you live longer and that your wealth increases. And he's the creator of the cause, which is what? To keep good ties with your family. So this is part of acknowledging Allah's lordship, that he is the creator of everything. The other category, when they categorize that one category, they break that down into 2, is the Tawheed of al-Asma wa Sifat. In other words, to single out Allah Azza wa Jal, to acknowledge and affirm his uniqueness as it relates to his names and his attributes. And that is part of Tawheed. Why? Because what is Tawheed again? Is to single out, to acknowledge the oneness of something is Tawheed. So for example, you may have a friend. You may have a friend. His name is Shuja'. It's a name here in Saudi Arabia. Shuja'. It means what? He's courageous. He's brave. And he may be a scaredy cat. Maybe somebody who's not courageous at all. Scared of his own shadow. If anything happens, he's the last one to get there. He's afraid of the dark. He's afraid of heights. He's afraid of everything. But his name is Shuja'. You have another friend. His name is Kareem. Generous. He's the stingiest person you know. But his name is Kareem. Allah Azza wa Jall's names are not like that. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Kareem. He is the generous, and the name of Allah Azza wa Jal has an attribute that is directly associated with it. At least one attribute directly associated with his name. So if his name is Al-Kareem, then that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is generous. بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ Allah Azza wa Jal's hands are extended. قَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ يَدُ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةٌ غُلَّتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the Jews said that Allah Azza wa Jal's hand is restrained. Meaning that Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't give. He's stingy. But Allah Azza wa Jal says, no, his hands are extended. And especially in this month of Ramadan, we see the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like you see at no other time during the year. So Allah is Al-Kareem. And Allah is As-Sami', the one who hears everything. We hear as human beings. You can hear, mashallah. And if you put a speaker up like they do right now, mashallah, you can hear very far down. At the Imam, you can hear blocks down. But if you were in Yambur, just like, I don't know, 100 miles from here or less, you can't hear somebody talking. If you were outside the masjid right now, and somebody was talking to his friend in the masjid with no aids, no speaker or anything like that, you couldn't hear anything that they were saying, even though you can see that they're talking, but you can't hear what they're saying. So we have limits to our hearing. Allah Azza wa Jalla has no limits. And that is why Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha used to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way. Praised him as being as-Sami'. قَدْ سَمِيَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا وَتَشْتَكِي إِلَى اللَّهِ Allah Azza wa Jalla, indeed, he heard the one who came to you complaining about her husband. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was right there. She was right there in the same house with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But she had no idea. She didn't hear what the woman was saying. And that's why Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who heard her. Allah Azza wa Jalla hears everything. And this quality is unique for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي In the context of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ If my servants ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, about me, tell them I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ I answer the call of the one who calls upon me when he calls. That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears your dua. And that also means that you shouldn't make dua to anyone else because they can't hear you. Allah Azza wa Jalla hears you and they don't. Even our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when we give him the salam, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Inna lillah malaikatan sayyahin yuballighuna an ummati as-salam. Allah has angels that travel around the earth. They convey to me the salam of my ummah. Not that the Prophet ﷺ hears you directly. And when we say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that's a dua. We're not talking directly to the Prophet ﷺ. We're asking Allah Azza wa Jalla to send his salat and salam upon the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Allah is as-Sami'. And so this is Tawheed. We affirm these names and these attributes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. alone. So this is the book of at-Tawheed. That is what we're going to be studying, inshallah ta'ala. الَّذِي هُوَ حَقُّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبِيدِ, which is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over his creation. And as we mentioned, most of the scholars break Tawheed down into two categories: affirmation and knowledge. And the second category is Tawheed al-Qasd. That is, that you single out Allah Azza wa Jal in your worship. And that is what this book is primarily dealing with. Singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our worship.
قوله تعالى ولقد بعثنا في وقوله تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. Allah the Most High said, and I did not create the jinn and mankind except for them to worship me alone.
Now, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this ayah, as we briefly discussed yesterday, Allah Azza wa Jalla in this ayah, He clarifies to us the reason that He created us. He clarifies for us that He created us and the reason that He created us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says that reason was for what? So that we worship Him. And we need a working definition of worship as we move through the book, so that we can understand why these things need to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and that they can't be for anyone else. So, what is the definition of worship? Interestingly enough, the definition of worship does not generally change from language to language. The definition of worship in the Arabic language is at-Tadallu lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala بفعل أوامره وترك نواهيه محبة وتعظيما, is that we submit ourselves to Allah, that we show servitude and subservience to Allah and tadallu lillah by doing what He has commanded and by avoiding His prohibitions with reverence and adoration. And this is the same thing that it means in the English language. If you look in the English dictionary, you look up the word worship, it's going to talk about some type of devotional act that one does out of reverence and adoration. And as you hold whatever it is that you are worshiping, you hold in high esteem and you love it, you adore it. And so this is worship. And it's important that we understand the concept of worship, so that when we do these acts of adoration or devotion, that they are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. In general, something that you show a degree of servitude to, you worship that thing. Like, is it possible that a person be a Muslim and worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, it is possible that a person be a Muslim and worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, after they worship other than Allah, are they still a Muslim? It's a question for another day that we'll cover. There are minor, and I'll use this term loosely, there are minor forms of worship that a person may do that does not take them out of the fold of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, for example, said, Ta'isa abdu dinar, Ta'isa abdu dirham. The Prophet ﷺ said, wretched is the one who worships the dinar. You know what a dinar is? It's a form, it was the gold that they used during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, not just here, not just in the Arab Peninsula, but it was a currency that was used outside as well. Ta'isa abdu dirham. May the one who worships the dirham is wretched, the one who worships this gold and silver. What does that mean, he worships gold and silver? It means he puts a stack of gold up and he goes and he prostrates to it? Is that what that means? No. It means he puts all his money in a circle and he makes tawaf around his gold and his silver? No, that's not what it means to worship. It means that the focal point of his life has become what? Become money. wealth has become the focal point of his life. And so therefore, he serves his wealth. His wealth does not serve him. He has become a servant of his wealth, even if he bows to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So though it is not in this scenario, it does not take him outside of the fold of Islam. When a person's focal point in life becomes something, then they are considered to be a worshiper of that thing. Right? Like we say in the English language, about a man who does everything that his wife tells him to do. Say he worships her. Right? That doesn't mean that he bows at her feet. That doesn't mean, no. But it means that she has become the focal point of his life. Which, for the sake of argument, that may not be a bad thing if your wife is a focal point of your life. But not if it takes precedence over the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not if serving your family takes precedence over serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not if your work, every man in Islam is responsible for taking care of his family. So you're going to go to work. But you need to ask yourself, your alarm clock is set for what? Is it set for Fajr? Set for Tahajjud? Or is it set for work? So if a person is missing Fajr, and he's not praying Salat al-Fajr at the time he's supposed to pray it, because he needs to get more sleep so he can work properly, then now he's putting his work over his deen. And that is scary, because it could lead a person to worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the real sense, the type of worship that would take them outside of the fold of Islam. So that is, when we talk about worship, we are talking in general about servitude, subservience, that you are submissive to something with reverence and adoration. And if that worship is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it is by doing what He has commanded us to do and avoiding His prohibitions. And Allah Azza wa Jal created us for that reason. He says in this ayah, He created us for that purpose, to worship Him and to worship Him alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we mentioned yesterday, we are the ones that benefit from that worship. Allah Azza wa Jal does not benefit anything from that worship. مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ رِزْقٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ يُطْعِمُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal does not want from us to provide for Him, nor does He want us to feed Him. إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ. Allah Azza wa Jal is the provider. So, that is the definition of worship that we'll probably be using for the majority of our book. However, I think it's important to mention that there's another very common definition of worship. It is the definition that was mentioned by Shaykh Tahir Wyatt ta'ala. And we should know it because it is common and because it will help you to understand the concept of worship better. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says that worship is ismun jami' li kulli ma yuhibbu Allah wa yardah. That it is a comprehensive term for everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and is pleased with. Whether that be statements or actions or beliefs, whether they be apparent or hidden. All of that takes the terminology of worship. So I'll give you an example now. Salat. Is salat worship? Yes. Why? Based on this definition. Because what? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. How do you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you? How do you know Allah loves something? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you to do something. If Allah commands you to do something, then He loves for you to do that thing. It's something that He likes or loves. How else do we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves something? This is important for us to understand. As you read the Quran, it'll help you to identify certain things. You know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves something when He praises the people who do a certain act. Even if there's no direct command to do that thing. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises the people who do something, then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves them. Allah Azza wa Jalla. Also, another way that we know that Allah loves an act is if Allah says He loves the people who do an act, which is different than the first one. We mentioned three things so far. Number one, Allah commands you to do something, or He commands that something be done, then we know Allah. The second one is that Allah praises the action, or the people who do that action. The third thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He loves the people who do an action. It's Allah yuhibbu tawwabin wa yuhibbu al-mutatahhirin. Allah loves those who repent to Him, and He loves the mutatahhirin. He loves those who purify themselves. So we get from that Allah loves tawbah, and that He loves purity, the act of purification. Therefore, tawbah is ibadah. It's worship. And purifying yourself is worship. And we should be thinking about these things. When you go to make wudu, it shouldn't just become mundane. Use the bathroom, make wudu, go pray. Wudu is ibadah. And if you think about it as ibadah, you're more likely to be conscious of the rewards of wudu. And why you're doing wudu the way that you're doing it. Why are you washing up to your elbows? Because your Prophet ﷺ did this. And you think about the hadith of Uthman, and it's as if you can see the Prophet ﷺ making wudu, and you are imitating your Messenger ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ told us that in the hereafter, there is a hole, there is a pond that the believers will drink from. And that you only come to that pond by invitation. The Prophet ﷺ, Allah gave him that pond, or that basin, if you will. It's his. He invites the believers to drink from it. The companions asked the Prophet ﷺ, how will you know those believers that come after you? Mind you, they know that the Prophet ﷺ is going to die. How will the Prophet ﷺ know the believers who come after? He will know them from the traces of wudu. The body parts that you wash in wudu will come white and shiny on the day of judgment. And so the Prophet ﷺ will recognize this ummah because of wudu. Inna Allah yuhibbu tawwabin wa yuhibbu al-mutatahhirin. Allah loves those who repent to Him frequently and those who purify themselves. We need to be thinking about these things as ibadah. Don't just turn, subhanAllah. This is why some of our scholars, rahimahumullah, they used to say that the niyyah can turn an act of adah, something that is normal and customary, into ibadah. So tonight, after Taraweeh, when you go to sleep, and you're going to sleep so that you can wake up for suhoor, so that you can be attentive at Salatul Fajr, that you don't go to Salatul Fajr and you're almost falling asleep. The Imam, if he makes sujood a little longer than normal, you did go to sleep. So you go to sleep a little at night so that you can be attentive in your salat. Then now your sleep is not simply because you're tired. You went to sleep because you want to please Allah Azza wa Jalla. And so that niyyah turns a mundane act like sleeping into ibadah. Just like your lack of niyyah or a weak intention can turn an act of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into something that's mundane and customary. Which happens to a lot of people when we do wudu. You're just making wudu. It's a very weak intention. Your intention is to make wudu, but are you really thinking about the fact that as the water is coming on and dripping off you, that with that water, sins are dripping off? Is that idea of ihtisab. You know, we talk about man sama Ramadan and iman and ihtisab. Whoever fasts the month of Ramadan out of true faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking his reward, ihtisab. Is that there when we're doing our wudu, for example? Is that seeking Allah's reward, that those sins are falling off, that you want those body parts to shine on Yawm al-Qiyamah? That you want to emulate your messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. Is that there? Because this is part of ibadah. So ibadah, as defined by Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, is a comprehensive term for everything that Allah loves and is pleased with. Everything. Whether that be statements, actions, or beliefs, whether they be hidden or apparent. So we said salat is ibadah. Why? Because Allah commanded us to pray. Is zakat ibadah? Giving away zakat. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to give zakat. Like, can you see salat? Can you see it? Yeah. When someone prays, you can see them pray. Can you see someone give zakat? Yes. Like, fear of Allah is that ibadah? Is it ibadah to fear Allah? Yes. Fear of Allah is ibadah. Can you see fear of Allah? No, it's hidden. So this is what we mean. We say both hidden and apparent. At-Tawakkul ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you have true reliance upon Allah. Can you see it? No. Tawakkul is in your heart. It's hidden. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to put our trust in Him. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Upon Allah put your trust if in fact you are believers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to put our trust and our reliance upon Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore we know that at-tawakkul is ibadah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do it. Therefore, if we put our trust or our reliance upon a human being, that we have taken an act of worship that should be solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we put it in a human being. And that doesn't mean that you don't trust people, that you don't trust their opinion, that you don't trust that they are going to do something. It doesn't mean that. It means that your reliance, your ultimate reliance, has to be upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned here. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have created the jinn and mankind only to worship me. And so this has to be the theme of our lives because it is the purpose for which we were created. I think that sometimes, it's important for us to recalibrate, to really take steps back and analyze the things that you do. Do they fulfill that purpose? Some people go to school. Their only objective for going to school is to get a diploma. Something that says that they went to this course. If their objective of going to school is to get a diploma, how serious of a student do you think they're going to be? Or maybe it's not school. Maybe you're supposed to go to some kind of professional development workshop. And you have to, for your job, you have to be in attendance. That's the only reason why you're going. How much have you really gotten out of that course? Is that person going to be serious? No. Because their only objective is to get a piece of paper that says that they were there. So they go to school, or they go to this professional development workshop. They're on their phone the whole time, texting. They're not paying attention. Maybe goes to sleep. But at the end of the day, they're happy. Why? Because they fulfilled their goal, which was to get a diploma. Other people go to school to learn. Actually being there is just something that occurs naturally because they have to be there to learn. Their purpose is to learn. Other people go to school to learn and because they want to continue their studies. They want to go to the best universities. And in order to get to the best university, they can't just go to class and do good. Now they got to do extracurricular activities. So you're going to find this person joining a particular, club, the history club. Or they're going to play a sport. Not particularly because they like the sport or they like the history club, but they need that on their resume or whatever it's called, so that they can get into the best schools. They have an objective. Everything else that they are doing needs to be towards that objective. In school, you have a period, it's called lunch. What's the objective of that lunch period? Are you learning during lunch? Are you doing an extracurricular activity? Not unless you're a professional eater. Other than that, then no. But you need that lunch period because you need a break. And that's what helps you to get through the remainder of the day. Right? So when you evaluate your life, you have to evaluate it in similar terms. You're not going to worship Allah all day. Not in the sense of ritual worship. You may get to the point in your life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you, that even your niyyah has changed all of your mundane acts into ibadah. You may get to that point in life. But in general, what I'm saying is that you still have to go to sleep. You're still going to eat. You're still going to do many things in life that are not considered ritual acts of worship. How do they help you in fulfilling your purpose, which is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That is how you have to evaluate life. And this is why the companion, Handala, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu saw him one day, and he saw on his face that he was a bit worried about something, preoccupied with something. And he said to him, Kayfa haluka ya Handala? How are you, Handala? Handala said, Qad nafaqa Handala. Handala has become a hypocrite. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said to him, and why are you saying that? He said, when we are with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's like we can see Jannah and we can see the hellfire in front of us. This is how much certainty we have about our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about our purpose in life, about what we're supposed to be doing. But then when we go home to our families, it's not the same way. We forget, and Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu was disturbed by this. And he said, I find in myself the same thing that you do. We need to talk to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this. And so they went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you remain in the state that you were in when you are with me, the angels will come down and they will shake your hands in the tunnel, in the pathways, in the streets. They would shake your hands because of the level of iman that you would have reached. He said, وَلَكِنْ يَا هَنْدَلَ سَاعَةٍ فَسَاعَةٍ. However, Handala, that's just not possible. There's a time for this, and there's a time for that. And that's how you have to structure your life. Based on this, though, what is your ultimate goal? Your ultimate goal has to be the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's what He created you for. He created you to worship Him alone. And therefore, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone has to be our focal point in life. And everything else revolves around that. Yes, I have to go to work. But if I go to work now with the intention of providing for my family, because providing for my family is worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then now that becomes worship. Now the way I look at my job becomes different, because I want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a Muslim, especially when we're Muslims who work amongst non-Muslims. And I want to shine, I want to stand out, because I want to make Islam look good. And I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us through His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. Allah azza wa jalla has written perfection, that you strive for perfection in what you do. And so if I am an engineer, then I strive to be the best at that. If I'm a supervisor, I strive to be the best at what I do. If I'm a doctor, I strive to be the best at that. Or a mechanic, then I strive to be the best at that. because I'm a Muslim. And that striving now becomes ibadah because Allah Azza wa Jalla is my focal point. I want to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His pleasure in worshiping Him alone, the focal point of my life. Is there a portion of my day that I may relax in? Yes, because I need to relax in order to get strong again. Just like your muscles, for those of you who like to work out, because that's a trend with some people. If you go to the gym every day and you work out that same muscle, it's not going to build. It needs time to rest so that it can build, and then you work it out again. And it's the same thing with your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that ritual worship. You can't pray all day. It's not going to work. You pray and then you stop. And you pray again and then you stop, and then you pray some more. And you make dua of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can go from one ibadah to the next so that you rejuvenate yourself. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for, and this is what we have to make the focal point of our life.
وقوله تعالى ولقد بعثنا في كل أمة رسولا أن اعبدوا الله واجتنبوا الطاغوت الآية. And surely we have sent to every single nation a messenger proclaiming worship Allah and avoid the taghut.
Right. The second ayah that is mentioned under this chapter, by the way, does not have a title. And just so that you're familiar with the structure of the book, for those of you who are actually studying the book, just so that you're familiar with the structure, the author set up the book the same way that Bukhari set up his Sahih. So we have Sahih al-Bukhari, right? Which is a book of what? Fiqh? Book of Hadith. Sahih al-Bukhari. In Sahih al-Bukhari, Bukhari begins, he says, Kitab, the book of. If you look at, for example, the very beginning of Sahih al-Bukhari, Kitab, Badr al-Wahid, the beginning of revelation. Then under the Kitab, that book, okay, which you can say is a part of the larger book, there are chapters, chapter. This particular chapter that we are covering does not have a title. All of the rest of the chapters, the other 66 chapters, they all have titles. This particular chapter does not have a title. But the topic is the obligation of Tawheed. The obligation of Tawheed. Meaning that Tawheed is an obligation upon every individual on the planet Earth. Okay? So, as we look at these ayat, we want to look at how does this indicate the obligation of Tawheed. This ayat, the second ayat, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. We have sent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed we have sent to every ummah a messenger proclaiming i'budullah wajtanibu at-Tawheed. And i'budullah wajtanibu at-Tawheed. Worship Allah and stay away from, reject the Tawheed. Alright. So we need to look at this. How is this Tawheed? Well, we said that Tawheed is those two categories, right? And one of those categories is to single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your worship. Here Allah Azza wa Jal says, U'budullah. That is a command from Allah. Worship Allah. Wajtanibu at-Tawheed. And reject or avoid or shun the Tawheed. What is a Tawheed? A Tawheed, in general, is anything that is worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We could use the word idol, for example, though that may not be comprehensive enough. We can say anything that is worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Tawheed. I want you to pay attention to this point here. But even that needs to be clarified. And I'll tell you why. Is Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Jesus, is he worshipped? People worship Christ? Yes. Is it okay for us to say that Jesus is a Tawheed? No. So, what we need to look at is that in general, what is worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is three categories. The first is that which has no will. It has no will of its own. A statue, for example, a tree, a rock. There are still people today who worship trees, who worship statues. These things that they worship have no will of their own. It is fine for us to call them Tawheed. That's considered to be a Tawheed. Okay? Like, the second thing, the second category, that which has a will, i.e. a human being. That which has a will and is pleased with being worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you may find, for example, in Allah Musta'an, this is even amongst some people that call themselves Muslims. They may worship certain people. They may worship their Shaykh. They may worship a saint. If that person, even if that person didn't command other people to worship him, if he is pleased with that worship, then he is considered a Tawheed. He is considered to be a Tawheed. Like, you have, that's the second category. The third category is that which has a will, but is not pleased that they are worshipped. And so this is where we look at, for example, our Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who some people worship. But he, alayhi salatu wasalam, is not pleased with that worship. In fact, subhanAllah, when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was alive, and a man came to him, and he said to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Ma shaa Allahu wa shit." Whatever Allah wills and what you will. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam got very angry and he said, "Ja'altani lillahi niddan." Are you making me a rival with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Qul ma shaa Allahu wahdahu. Say what Allah wills alone. Or say, "Ma shaa Allahu thumma shit." What Allah wills and then what you will. Don't put me on the same level with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was not pleased with that. And so because of that, you cannot say that because the Prophet ﷺ is worshipped, that he is therefore a Tawheed. You can never say that. Because the Prophet ﷺ is not pleased with that worship. Isa ﷺ is not pleased with the fact that he is worshipped. So there are three categories again. That which has no will, that's a Tawheed and is worshipped. That which has a will and is pleased with the worship, that one is a Tawheed. And those people who are not pleased, who are worshipped, but are not pleased that they are worshipped, we cannot call them Tawheed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, worship Allah and shun the Tawheed. Here, we have, and this is important also for us to understand with Tawheed. Now I'm going to ask a question. And I want you by a show of hands. And you have to answer either yes or no. Does Tawheed mean to worship Allah? If you say yes, raise your hand. Does Tawheed mean to worship Allah? Okay. Next. Who says no, it doesn't mean to worship Allah? Next question. Does Tawheed mean to worship Allah alone? Who says no? Anybody? Tawheed means to worship Allah alone. Why is it important to add alone? It's because somebody, and even the mushrikun in general, they worship Allah and they worshiped other than Allah. And that's why they were called mushrikun, from shirk. Which, if you have a sharik, like if you have a business, and you have a sharik, that means you have a partner. If you have a sharika, it means you have a company, usually because there's going to be more than one person working in it. So they were called mushrikun, not because they didn't worship Allah, but because they worshiped Allah and other things along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's important that we say alone. And that is why at-Tawheed, that's why we use the word Tawheed, because it means to single out. You only single out something when there's both affirmation and negation, and that's why this is important. So, for example, what's your name? Enes? Okay. So if I said Enes is sitting down, Enes is sitting down, I have affirmed that he is sitting down. But is he the only one sitting down? No. If I said, for example, only Enes is sitting, or Enes is sitting and no one else is sitting, now that is Tawheed. I've singled him out as the one who is sitting. And that's why when we say the Shahada, we say what? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. La ilaha. There is no deity. There is no true deity. Right? First, I negate, and then I say illallah, except for Allah. So now we are affirming that only Allah Azza wa Jal is worthy of our worship. He is the only true deity. If you don't have affirmation and negation, then you are not singling that thing out. If I said Zayd is standing, all I'm doing is affirming that he is standing. But if I say no one is standing except Zayd, then now that is Tawheed. I have singled him out as the one who is standing. So when I say that there is no true deity except Allah, now I'm singling out Allah Azza wa Jal as the one who deserves our worship. And this is why, if you look at the message of the messengers, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say He sent them for? وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. I have sent to every nation a messenger. What did those messengers proclaim? Their message was the same across the board. Worship Allah and shun the Tawheed. So if you worship Allah and you shun everything that is worshipped besides Allah, then that becomes a Tawheed. You have affirmation and negation. And you will not have Tawheed unless you have both. And that's a very important point for us to understand. So in the first ayah, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ, I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. Allah tells us the reason why we have been created, and that is to worship Him alone, for Tawheed. And then He says, in this ayah, that He sent a messenger to every nation to call them to Tawheed. Therefore, the means by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created us, the means by which He conveys the purpose of our existence to us is through the messengers. It's important for us to understand. So not only did Allah create us and created us for this purpose, but He sent messengers to convey that purpose. Therefore, the messengers are the vehicle by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates to the children of Adam. Why is that important? Because that means that we have to obey the messages. It's not enough. You know, some people, some Muslims, unfortunately, you might hear them say, oh, that's only Sunnah. Only Sunnah? And it's only something that the Messenger ﷺ told us to do. And who is he conveying? On whose behalf is he conveying? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allah. Allah is the one who sent him. He is a messenger, meaning that he is conveying a message that comes from the Prophet ﷺ. So we should be very careful when we use that terminology and recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent them for this purpose. And that is the cornerstone of the da'wah of all of the prophets and messengers. Does that mean that this is the only thing that the messengers came to convey, was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that that was the only thing, but it means it was the most important. And it means that all of the other things that they conveyed, the prophets ﷺ, they dealt with issues of social justice. They dealt with issues of character. They dealt with issues of relationships. how you deal with your neighbor, how you deal with your spouse, your children. They dealt with all of this. The prophets dealt with all of these things. But those were secondary matters which were built upon the foundation of at-Tawheed. And that is because none of these other things that we're talking about, good character, generosity, and how you deal with your neighbor, and upholding social justice, none of these other things are sustainable, nor will they lead to an individual's happiness or success of a society as a whole, unless they are grounded and rooted in the desire to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. It is that desire, it is that Tawheed which truly unites people. Other than that, if these things are done for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that will become manifest and it will come crashing down. These other aspects that we talked about, the other things that the prophets of Allah called to, if they're not built on Tawheed, they're going to be built on pleasing someone else. And it's really that simple. You're either doing what you do to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to worship Him, or you're doing it to please another entity. Whether that other entity be some false god, or whether it be your own ego and your own self-gratification. Or maybe you're motivated by guilt or whatever else it is that motivates you to do what you do. If it is not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His pleasure alone is motivating you, then that thing is not sustainable. And that is why the prophets began their da'wah with Tawheed. Because all of the other things that the prophets came with, the giving, charity, and being, all of that has to be built on your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
وقوله تعالى وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا, الآية. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him and that you be dutiful to your parents.
Now, your Lord decreed that you worship none but Him. Do we see the Tawheed here? Worship none but Him. Not that you worship Him, that you worship none but Him. Affirmation and negation, or negation and affirmation. And that is Tawheed. قَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. Your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him, and that you be kind and dutiful to your parents. How does this ayah indicate the obligation of Tawheed? It indicates the obligation of Tawheed because it's a command. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do something, then that command becomes an obligation upon us. Unless there's something that indicates otherwise. Here, in these ayat, and you should go back to Surah Al-Isra and read these ayat. In these ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us 18 commands. The first of those commands is what? To worship none but Him. And that is why we know that Tawheed is the most obligatory of all the obligations. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started these 18 commands with the worship of Him and Him alone subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you worship Allah? Yeah, Muslim. Why do you worship Allah? If a non-Muslim came and asked you that question, why do you worship Allah? What would your answer be? You need to know the answer to this question. Why do you worship Allah? Allah just says here, and He has commanded and decreed that you worship none but Him. And then He says to be dutiful and kind to your parents. Someone asks you, well, why? Why do you worship Allah? You take a stab at it. MashaAllah. He said the question is, why not? Like, that's a good philosophical way to debate, but we need an answer.
Because Allah commanded us to.
Because Allah commanded you to. Okay. Like, yeah. Because it's our purpose for existence. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for that purpose. Yes, go ahead. Because He's our creator. Like, all of those answers are correct. If you combine between them the fact that He is our creator, Allah Azza wa Jalla, why is it that you worship Him alone? Like He says, because He is the one who created us. He is our sustainer. He is our master, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because He has the most beautiful names and lofty attributes, Allah, because He is As-Sami', He deserves to be worshipped. Because He is Al-Ali, He deserves to be worshipped. Because He is Al-Kareem. And so we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He deserves to be worshipped. And that's basically what the Shaykh here was saying. He said, why not worship Him? Look at the qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. Look at His attributes. He is the one that deserves to be worshipped. He is As-Samad, Al-Ahad, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one, the unique, the eternal, the one whom all turn to for all of their needs, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so because of that, He deserves to be worshipped. And on top of that, He commanded us to worship Him. And that is our purpose for existence. And we also worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a secondary reason, because of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. Our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam stood one night until his feet were swollen. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala said to the Prophet, you are praying like this? And to the point that your feet swell? You're praying like this, even though Allah Azza wa Jalla has forgiven all of your past and future shortcomings? What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He didn't say here, I'm worshiping Allah because He deserves to be worshipped. No, that is the truth. But the Prophet ﷺ gave a different reason. He said, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a grateful servant to Allah? Should I not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for not just the things that He has given me materially, but the fact that He has forgiven me for my sins and my shortcomings? Should I not be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that? Should we not show our gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jalla, who has given us abilities that nobody can give us? The ability to see, the ability to hear. Should we not thank Allah Azza wa Jalla for these things? That's true. If you were to try to enumerate Allah Azza wa Jalla's blessings, you couldn't list them. You couldn't list them. It would be impossible for you to list them and to enumerate them. So we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He deserves our worship, and because He is the one deserving of worship, period. And because of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Allah Azza wa Jalla then says, and be dutiful and kind to your parents. And this shows that our obligation, after our obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who He has sent to bring His message, that our next obligation is to our parents. To be dutiful to them, to be kind to them, if not for the mere fact that they, as Allah Azza wa Jalla is our creator, He made them the cause of our existence. And therefore, it is upon us to be dutiful and kind to them. Now, let's just finish this chapter, inshallah.
وقوله تعالى واعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا.
Now, yeah.
Worship Allah, do not associate anything with Him.
Worship Allah, do not associate anything with them. And if you finish reading those ayats, which are in Surah An-Nisa, or you finish reading that ayah, this ayah is known as the ayah of Al-Huquq Al-Ashara, or the 10 rights. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 10 rights, that is, rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has over you, rights that your parents have over you, rights that your neighbors have over you, your spouse and so on. The orphans. So here, in this particular ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about these rights, He begins with what right? His right to be worshipped alone. Wa'budullah وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah. But did he stop there and just say worship Allah? No. He said, and do not associate anything with him in that worship. So we have affirmation and negation. This is Tawheed. You have to single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now.
وقوله تعالى قل تعالوا أتل ما حرم ربكم عليكم ألا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا الآيات. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, come, I will explain to you what your Lord has made forbidden for you, that you do not worship anything besides him.
Now,
be dutiful to your parents.
Now, so the Prophet ﷺ here has been commanded by Allah to recite to the people that which has been prohibited for them. And so the Prophet ﷺ, the first thing that Allah revealed, Allah tushriku bihi shay'a. Do not associate anything in worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to worship him alone, and the greatest command is to worship him alone, and the greatest prohibition is to associate partners with him in worship.
Abdul said, whoever wishes to know the advice which the Prophet ﷺ emphasized, and let him read the statement of Allah, say, O Muhammad, come, I will explain to you what your Lord has made forbidden for you.
Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in this particular narration, which is the Sunan and Tirmidhi, and there's some weakness in this particular narration, but it's going back to the ayah. He says, if you want to know the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, it could be translated as the will of the Prophet ﷺ, because a will is something that someone writes to leave behind to instruct those who are living after his death, correct? He says if you want to look at the very will that the Prophet, or the testament that the Prophet ﷺ put his seal upon, what does it mean to put when you put your seal upon something?
Certified.
That it's certified, exactly. You know, if you were working somewhere and you got official notice, but it was open when it came to you, the envelope wasn't even sealed, then you would be suspicious about the authenticity of the contents, because maybe somebody tampered with it. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu was saying here, if you want to be certain about what it was that the Prophet ﷺ left as advice for this ummah, it was these ayat. Allah tushriku bihi shay'an wa bil walidayni ihsana. That you don't commit any shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you don't associate anything. And as you'll see when we go along, why is the author going to talk about ostentation and showing off? Because that's a form of shirk. It's not just some things that people think are apparent. Oh, well, I don't make sujood to a statue. I don't prostrate to Buddha or any other. No, it's not just that. Though that is part of associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other things that a person does when they seek to please other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they themselves may be falling into a form of shirk. And that's why it's important to study these things, to know وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, without going into a whole linguistic, explanation. Here you have what is known as an indefinite noun in a prohibitive context. That is that Allah is prohibiting us from doing something. And he's mentioning as an indefinite noun, and that they say yufidul umum. It means that means everything, that you don't commit, that you don't associate anything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the 5 ayat that were covered in the first chapter. Now there's one hadith that we're going to cover, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll be finished the first chapter of the book.
It is narrated that Mu'adh ibn Jabal, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I was riding behind the Prophet ﷺ on a donkey, and he said to me, O Mu'adh, do you know what the right of Allah is upon his slaves, and what the right of the slaves is upon Allah?
Stop there. Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala, he was Mu'adh ibn who? Who knows? Mu'adh ibn Jabal, a great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba, even though he was young. Mu'adh ibn Jabal wasn't old when the Prophet ﷺ died. He was in his 20s. best when the Prophet ﷺ died. But he was the one that the Prophet ﷺ sent to Yemen to teach the people about Islam, in that famous hadith. You're going to a people from the people of the book, right? So Mu'adh was young, but he was still knowledgeable. And it was his knowledge that qualified him for da'wah. We shouldn't just say we should send the young people out to give da'wah because Mu'adh went out to give da'wah. No. Mu'adh didn't give da'wah just because he was young. He was young and he was knowledgeable. As the Prophet ﷺ said about him. So here, he says, one day I was riding with the Prophet ﷺ on a donkey. The Prophet ﷺ says to him, Mu'adh, do you know the right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has over his creation and the rights of the creation over Allah? أَتَدْرِي مَا حَقُّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعِبَادِ? Do you know what Allah's right is over his creation? Now, this is an interesting question. But it's not a strange question, but it's interesting. We need to really consider it. For you brothers here who are married, if I was to ask you, do you know what the rights of your wife are over you and your rights over her? MashaAllah. You could break out a pen and paper and start the list. Yeah, my right is A, B, C, D. MashaAllah. You memorize them before you even get married. This is my rights over my wife. Okay. More importantly, though, are the rights that she has over you. Because Allah is going to ask you about your responsibilities. What were you supposed to be doing? Not if she fulfilled your rights, but if you fulfilled hers. So you need to know those. Because relationships are built upon rights and responsibilities. The rights of that person become your responsibility, and your rights upon them become their responsibility. Allah Azza wa Jalla is our master, we are his slaves. That's a relationship. And that relationship is built upon rights and responsibilities. Not because Allah Azza wa Jalla owes us anything, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took upon himself the responsibility to give us something if we fulfill the rights that he has over us. And so this question from the Prophet ﷺ to Mu'adh is a question about rights and responsibility. Do you know what rights Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has over you? It's very important. Because once you know that right as a slave, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala you will strive to fulfill that right.
He continued, the right of Allah upon his slaves is that they worship him alone and do not associate anything with him.
Stop there. Then the right that Allah has over all of his slaves is that they worship him alone and that they don't associate anything with him in that worship. And that is called at-Tawheed. So the right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has upon us is Tawheed, that we worship him alone.
The right of his slaves upon him is that he does not punish anyone who does not associate anything with him.
Right. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it a duty upon himself. Not that he owes it to us, but it is a duty that he put upon himself. The same way, you know the famous hadith the Prophet ﷺ narrates, it's a hadith Qudsi. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni haramtu al-dhulma ala nafsi. I have made oppression, wrongdoing haram upon myself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْتُهُ بَيْنَكُمْ مُحَرَّمًا. And I've also made it haram between yourselves. Right, so here the Prophet ﷺ says to Mu'adh that the right that we have over Allah, the right that his slaves have over him, is that he will not punish anyone who avoids associating partners in worship with him. None.
I said, O Allah's Messenger, shall I not give glad tidings to the people? He replied, no, do not inform them, lest they rely upon this promise and lapse in their service to him. Agreed upon.
What is agreed upon? Bukhari. Like this hadith, which is collected by Bukhari Muslim, the conclusion of this hadith, which is the conclusion of the chapter, the Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's hearing this now, that wait a minute, if we uphold this right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will not punish us. There's only two things in the hereafter: punishment and bliss. In other words, if we avoid shirk, we don't associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we uphold this right of Allah, Allah will not punish us, neither that we'll go to Jannah. Should I not inform the people? Can I give them these glad tidings? This was a happy day for Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala anhu to hear this, because now he knows, if I just focus on this, making sure that I get everything else out the way, not just statues and these other kind of idols, but I get rid of my ego, and I get all these things out the way, and I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, that Allah azza wa jalla will give me Jannah. Should I let the people know? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that. Don't tell them this. حَتَّى لَا يَتَّكِئُوا. So they won't rely upon this information, perhaps even misunderstanding it, and then not striving for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Rahim, was Ra'uf. He was compassionate and merciful with this ummah. He wants us to strive. And so if a person thinks that, wait a minute, if a person misunderstands this, and they think that, wait a minute, all I have to do is not commit shirk. You know, all I have to do is not worship an idol, then I'll go to Jannah. That may lead to them a decrease in their striving. The same way, and subhanAllah, because we're in the month of Ramadan, you can use a lot of the Ramadan examples. The same way, we don't know when Laylatul Qadr is. What happens if a person knows exactly when Laylatul Qadr is? SubhanAllah. Let's just say it was the 25th. He's lazy, 25th, hold on, Laylatul Qadr, hold on. Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr. More superior, better than 1,000 months. I'll just skip a few days here and there, because this night is going to make up for everything I've done wrong. And I'm going to go all out. And what happens? You don't strive the same way in the other nights. The same way, and this is normal, this is natural, by the way. The same way we strive in the last 10 nights, a way we don't strive in these nights. You're not supposed to. The Prophet ﷺ himself made i'tikaf when? In the last 10 nights. Because he wanted to make sure that he was in seclusion during the time when it was possible to be Laylatul Qadr. So even our Prophet ﷺ increased in ibadah. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said that when the last 10 nights entered, the Prophet ﷺ stayed awake the entire night. Ahya laylahu. He stayed awake the entire night. وَأَيْقَظَ أَهْلَهُ. And he woke up his family. He would awaken his family, which indicates that perhaps during the other times, he may allow them to sleep. He may allow them to get their rest. But during the last 10, it's time to get up and worship. وَشَدَّ مِنْزَرَهُ. And he tied up his izam, which has two different interpretations. One, it's similar to our English terminology. When we say he rolled up his sleeves, what's that mean? Got serious, right? Shadda mizarahu can take that meaning. He got serious about everything. And it can also mean tying the izam, to refer to literally tying it tight, meaning that he avoided any contact with any marital, relations. The point is that the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh, no, don't tell them such that they would rely upon this. But Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala at some point obviously did narrate this hadith. It's collected by Bukhari and Muslim, and it has come to us, and it's a famous hadith. And we shouldn't misunderstand it to just mean that whoever upholds the bare minimum of Tawheed, that he will be from amongst the people of paradise who are not punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Tawheed has a bare minimum, and then there are levels, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow when we get to chapter 2. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, sallallahu wa sallam wa barak, ala nabiyyina Muhammad. If there are any questions, we'll take them now. And I'm sorry for going over today.
Let me see.
Nah, okay.
What's the difference between
Worshiping and obeying. Okay, so the question says, what is the difference between worshiping and obeying? Now, if you remember when we talked about the definition of worship, we talked about in general that there is servitude or subservience along with adoration and reverence. Along with adoration and reverence, meaning that you love this thing and that you revere this thing. All right. So, you, for example, as you're driving down the street, a red light comes. You do what? You stop. You are obeying the law. You're not worshiping the law. You're obeying the law in this sense because obedience means compliance. That you comply with the rules and regulations. It does not mean necessarily that you love the one who made the law, that you hold them in, that you revere them, that you venerate them, that you adore them. Or it doesn't even necessarily mean that you are subservient to them. You comply with these rules and regulations because they are beneficial for society as a whole. Other than that, we obey our parents, for example, and we love our parents. But we obey them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do so. And so it is from the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we obey His messenger, that we obey our parents. And that is not considered to be worship. No.
Who was the messenger for the Hindus and the Buddhists?
The question says, who was the messenger for Hindus and the Buddhists? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He sent to every nation, every ummah a messenger, not to every people who gathered together to follow a religion. And so the messengers who were sent to other nations, meaning perhaps I'm going to say it's not Hindus or Buddhists, but who was the messenger for the Indian people, for example, or for, let's say, Chinese people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, because He did not inform us who those messengers were in the Quran. Our messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has informed us, in some narrations about which there's some difference of opinion, but that there were up to 124,000 prophets and messengers. That being the case, those prophets and messengers, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, were sent to every ummah. What was preserved from the messages, what was important, all of that is in the Quran. There's nothing that was sent to the prior nations, whether that be Jews or Christians or any of the other peoples of the earth, because they received revelation as well. That's something else for us to understand. Allah Azza wa Jalla did not just reveal His book in Arabic. That's the Quran. The Injil was not revealed in Arabic. The Torah was not revealed in Arabic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messengers to other peoples, those people of China and India, where their books were revealed in a language that they understood. And perhaps what we see from Eastern philosophies and the hikmah that remains, perhaps some of that is what was preserved from what came to them of their messengers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And what benefit would we have as a people today who are instructed to follow the Quran, to know that the prophet of China at one particular time is this person, or the prophet of India at this particular time, or the prophet of South Africa at that particular time? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The prophet for all of mankind after Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's the prophet for all of mankind, and he's the one that we need to study and know about and learn about his life and hold him in esteem. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. والله أعلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.